Welcome to another episode of our tune-up video series,
where we talk about everything that we don't show you in our regular episodes. I guess for starters, we should mention that we've done some more tuning here at the shop.
We did, yeah.
Put in some fancy new LED lights.
Don't
Don't look directly into them, Pete. They're too intense.
They're pretty amazing, actually. I was anticipating a much harder job, but it worked out to be quite simple because they were...
I wouldn't know. I wasn't involved.
Well, you weren't, but me and Moose did the job, and they were a plug-and-play deal where I just had to unplug some lights and plug them in, which made it really simple versus... I think a more conventional shop may have them hardwired in, so that would have been much more cumbersome.
Yeah.
But me and Moose spent about 2.5 hours replacing them, and I sourced these actually on Amazon. They're, geez, I think they were $120
Yeah, that
each,
sounds right. Yeah.
which is, in my opinion, a huge bargain for what you get.
Light, yeah.
And these are 19,000 lumen versus the metal halides, which were 16,000.
Okay.
So obviously now we have better lighting. It's more consistent lighting.
Better color temperature.
Exactly, which is the huge thing for me. The color temperature, and there is no more hum.
The hum is gone.
So the only hum that you may hear in this video now is the transformer in the corner, but there's nothing we can do about that.
Nah, yeah.
So
it's quiet compared to those lights.
It was
terrible.
such a great upgrade. So
Yeah.
if you're interested in the lights and some more information, there will be a link to the Amazon page where all the details are in the description of this video.
All right. So shop tuning aside, maybe we should talk a little bit about some of our projects, starting with the 1/4-inch fuel lines in Connie Salika.
Yeah, there was a lot of you were just like triggered in a big way
Yes.
as to why on earth would we use those small tiny lines. Well, the reality is those lines support a lot of horsepower, much
Sure.
more horsepower than little Beamsy's going to be producing there.
Yeah, exactly. I think, was it Lawson from AEM that was telling us that he's seen cars on 1/4-inch lines make 500 wheel. He's seen cars on 3/8 line make 900 wheel. So this Beamsy's going to make 200 wheel. 1/4-inch line shouldn't be a bottleneck.
No,
in the
it
system.
certainly won't.
I mean, had we known ahead of time that there were 1/4-inch lines in there, we might have thought about upgrading them just because we were paranoid. But now that we decided to stick with them and we've done a little research on it, it seems like it's not going to be a problem.
No.
Really, the only downside of the 1/4-inch is cosmetic, because adapting from 3/8 down to the 1/4 was a bit of a fussy job with some hose clamps and stuff that weren't exactly like AN spec, but
Yeah, but we've already forgotten about it. Like every time I look in the trunk, I don't see the lines, and you're not like, oh, there's a rubber hose there and a barb.
Yeah,
and, from if we're trying to win car shows, I totally get that would not be the way to go. But from a functional standpoint, and for version 1.0, I think that fuel system is perfectly
It'll be
adequate,
fine.
perfectly good.
yeah, it'll be fine. I will eventually upgrade. I think we mentioned in the episode that we will eventually upgrade maybe to a fuel cell in the trunk. And at that point, I'll go full out on AN lines everywhere and make it real fancy. But really, there's no need for that in this car. If it sees a lot of track duty, then I could see the logic in a fuel cell, because the way the trunk's mounted, or where the fuel tank is mounted up in the trunk, is maybe it's 70s spec as far as safety goes. So if it turns into like a really hardcore track car, like maybe I even want to do some vintage racing in it, then a fuel cell and a bunch of fancy fuel lines would come into the mix. But until then, I'm perfectly content with what we've got. It's not going to leak.
No,
It's going to work fine
it's
for
going to
BMG.
be good.
And we'll prove it to you on the dyno soon.
Exactly.
All right, on to the next one. We've had a lot of comments about the K-swap, and in particular about the issue of using a dry sump rather than a notched oil pan.
And funny enough, that was my first thought when I was doing this. Way back when we were at the old shop and we kind of test fit the motor into the engine bay, and I said, well, we're gonna have a huge clearance problem here. What should we think about doing? I said, well, the easy answer is dry sump.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of research on it, and the problem is it is an extremely costly
It is pretty pricey.
venture in that sense. Like anywhere from, I think on the low side, you're talking $2,500
Yep.
all the way up into, $4,000 or $5,000 if you get into a really expensive system.
Yeah.
And it's not bulletproof in the extent that, of course, a dry sump system, once it's figured out and ironed out, it works exceptionally well. You're not going to have any starvation issues. But getting it there, I was talking to I don't remember what team it was, a Subaru team that had a whole dry sump setup, and they went through 3 motors trying to get it set up, and
Really?
figured out, because there's a pressure rating and all this, and yes, maybe they screwed up too, but it's not just you put a dry sump into the car
Don't just slap it on there and go
and it's
rip.
going to run. There is some thought, and again, what we're trying to do with this swap is make it relatable to you guys, right? And using a $3,000 dry sump system, it'll make things easier, but at the same time, how many of you are going to be putting, an $800 K24 into your car and then spending $3,000 on a dry sump, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think the appeal of this swap is that it can be done on a budget.
Yeah.
So dry sump kind of throws that out the window. So
Exactly. And, to be fair, when we say budget, we're thinking like $6,000 to $8,000 in reality. Like
any
it's not
custom swap's going to get pricey.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Some of you were commenting like, "Hey, how can I do this for real cheap?" And the answer is you can't, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a fabricator and you can do all of that stuff yourself, which would obviously keep costs down. But even then, just the components involved are going to add up.
yeah.
And then swaps aren't cheap. That's just
No, they're not.
that's the way it
Anytime you
goes.
do it, even a K swap into a Civic, right? Like that can be a minimum of $6,000.
Yeah, 5-6 grand is probably about it.
Like yes, there are ways to do it on a budget, but at the same time, we're not building cars to just putt around on the street. We want to make sure they work well and function well on a racetrack. So we're taking those necessary steps, spending the extra money on quality components and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right?
And you don't necessarily want to add 50% cost by putting a dry sump in there. So
Yeah.
that's really why we're dodging that one for now. And we think the wet sump setup should work fine. We're
Yeah.
going to put some wings on that pan. We'll have the right capacity.
Yes.
Putting some baffles
Yep,
in there. It's
yep.
going to be good.
We will figure that all
It's going
out.
to be good. All right, on to the next one. Final numbers on the Mustang. Selling the
Yes.
Mustang and how we did financially on that car.
So many of you were so angry that I was asking so much money apparently for the Mustang, and I didn't think so at all. And judging by the market, there was a decent amount of interest in it, and I ended up selling that car for $9,500 Canadian.
Right.
And
After we turned it back to pretty close to stock.
yeah. So if you look on the back here, you'll see my full list of what we have sold stuff for, and we are at a total of $14,680 right now, Canadian, of course, for parting the Mustang and selling it, which is not
bad.
all bad considering we wanted 15 grand originally.
Yeah.
And I still have a set of coilovers left.
Yeah.
A rear sway bar, I think.
And
The cams. Yeah. So there's still another potential to make maybe $1,500 there.
Yeah, or more.
Which will put us up, 16,500 ish. So it's pretty damn good, in my opinion, when you look at, sometimes it is worth parting a car. It is, 7-8 months later, though?
Yeah, we weren't in a hurry, which helps. We didn't need the money right now.
No.
And there was some labor involved to part the car,
Yep.
so you have to factor that in. But
Yeah.
I think all in all, it was still worth it for us.
Big time, I think so.
Yeah. It only took us a day to part that car.
Yeah, it did.
Wasn't
I don't
too
think it's certainly, if you have the time and effort you want to put into parting a car, it's worthwhile. It just comes down to, some people don't want to go through that. And I'm not going to lie, selling parts on the internet is not the funnest thing in the world. So
No.
it's just like, sometimes you really got to trudge through that and
The
get your
lowball
money.
offers
Yeah,
and all
but
that.
if you wait for it, to me, you'll always get what you want if you think you're in the ballpark, right? Which
Yeah.
I thought we were. Like this car, there was a lot of other high mileage Mustangs out there for $6,000, but they're scrap heaps, Like really, if somebody hasn't cared for a car and it's a high mileage car,
Yeah.
it's not going to be good. But
Yeah, this car had a lot
I hope
of
people
quality.
think that, our high mileage car was much better than that.
Well, we fixed up a lot of the key stuff on it. So I
100%,
think,
yeah.
I think it was a good buy.
Yeah.
So. Okay, S2000 engine build.
Yes.
Every single video we get comments, where is the badass 2000? Update on the S2000. Where's the S2000? Where is the S2000, Peter? It's right over there, as a matter of
It's
fact.
the bane of my existence
Yes.
currently.
Yes.
Trust me, if there's anybody out there that wants this car done, it is this guy right
I'm
here.
pretty high on that list, too.
And the problem is we are in the midst of an engine rebuild, but we have decided to sleeve the block because we found some scoring on it and you can't just hone that block. So the sleeves that we need are back ordered.
Right.
So we're working with Eric at Levine Motorsport, and unfortunately, he dropped the block off at the machine shop, and everything was good until we got a phone call that said, you know what, we don't have the sleeves, and it's going to be a while. So here we are waiting again.
Yep.
It's the project that never seems to end.
But when the sleeves go in, we'll get the motor back in. It'll go in the car. We'll go to the track. We'll have some fun with it.
And there will be videos.
And there will be videos.
Yes.
So they will come, but you guys will know. Believe me, we will update you as soon as we have anything worthy of an update, other than the one that we just gave you. So, related to S2000s, we got a really thoughtful email from a guy named Chad Bennett who asked us, he's cross-shopping an S2000 or an FRS, which I think is a pretty common debate. In fact, a good friend of mine, John, in Brantford, has recently sold his S2000, having previously owned an FRS, to buy a BRZ TS edition.
Right.
So there's lots of guys out there who I think would cross-shop those cars. And Chad was asking us, which car do we think is best? How do they compare to other cars that might be in the same class or like might be grouped in the same class for racing purposes, be it autocross or time attack? How reliable are the two cars, and how do they compare on lap times? So, I mean, they're actually very, very different cars, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
They're both a ton of fun to drive. They're both very responsive rear-wheel drive cars, but they deliver performance in very different ways, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And I think if you're looking from a track standpoint, they can be similar in that sense.
Yeah.
But for daily use, like to me, it's a no-brainer. The FRS is such a more practical,
For sure.
livable, everyday vehicle that you can still take to the racetrack and enjoy, where the S2000 is more of a weekend racer, a car that you would drive on the weekends. Like, I dailied the S2000 for about a month, and it's just cumbersome. It's small. Like, even to go grocery shopping, you're just
trunk
always
space.
piling stuff in the passenger seat. And if you've got somebody else with you, it's kind of like good luck.
Even taking like a spare set of wheels and tires to the track with you in S2000 is basically impossible.
Yeah.
You would need like a hitch setup or a trailer. Or in the FRS, you can put your track wheels and tires across the back seat. So it's definitely a more versatile car than the S2000. But the S2000 stock versus stock is faster.
Yes.
By 2 or 3 seconds a lap at our track at TMP.
I think it's got the power plant is much better.
Power plant's better. Transmission is better.
Yeah.
The brakes on both are good enough for the track, but not great.
Yeah.
They both could use a little bit of help in the brake department. You can fit a lot more wheel and tire on an FRS than you can on the S2000, stock versus stock. S2000 has really limited space up front. For me, the driving experience in them is really quite different. The FRS is super neutral. You can drift it. It's very comfortable in a drift. It doesn't want to snap back on you.
Very true, yeah.
Where the S2000 is like really
twitchy
snappy and
and
twitchy, and like on the brakes, it's like the back end is always moving around.
You like figure out a way to drive it, and you drive it just that one way. Where with the FRS, it's a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
Where if you want to hoon it, you can hoon it.
Very true.
Or if you're just like, I want to set a fast lap time, you can certainly just like dig in and do that, right?
Yes, I think that's a great way of explaining it. It's a very flexible car, and both have tons of aftermarket support. Both can be made to go very, very fast.
So I think the question is, which one would you say is more exciting, more fun? Like if you had to choose for the track.
Well, I mean, for Chad, he wants it to be both a street and a race car. And I think for me, if I want a dual-purpose car, I'll go with the FRS.
Yeah, I agree as well.
If I'm building a pure race car, like if I'm going to go and build a time attack car, man, it's a tough call because I love the FRS. I really do enjoy it at the limit. But I think the speed potential is maybe a little bit more in the S2000.
Excuse me, yeah.
I feel like you could build that car to be faster, with a little less budget required, a little less effort required to get the most out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me personally, like at the racetrack, I find the S2000 is just a little bit funner to drive just because it revs out so much. The transmission is just so beautiful. You can really pound on it and get that sense of accomplishment and reward.
Yeah.
I think a little bit better than the FRS. And I mean, we're talking neck to neck. I'm splitting hairs at this point, but NA as well, like the S2000 motor is already so far ahead. So yeah, if you start getting into turbocharging, even, there is much more potential, I think, to make power on a stock block with the F20 than there is with the FA20. So that is its upside, but it's so tough.
They're both great
really
cars.
Is. I don't
There's
think
no
you're going to go
losers here.
exactly. You're not going to go wrong.
Both cars will put a huge smile on your face. So eventually it's going to come down to personal preference. You need to drive both and see which speak to you the most, because both cars really do speak to you from a driving enthusiast standpoint. They are super fun cars. So no losers. Try them both. We like them both, but
and one day we will shoot a video of us ripping against each other.
Yeah. When the S2000 is fixed, head-to-head battle coming your way. That's a good call, PT. I like it. Okay, thanks for the email, by the way, Chad, and I hope we kind of answered your question there. So, talk about buying some future project cars.
Man,
Pete,
yes.
if you haven't noticed, Pete has a love of buying cars, shopping for cars. It's a passion of his.
It is. I'll be the first to admit I have a problem.
He does, and I'm a bit of an enabler here. So we've been toying with the idea of buying a few different future project cars.
Yes.
One of which is an R34 GTR.
The dream car.
That is kind of a dream
the
car.
The Halo car.
It is, and we think, we can get them here in Canada, and you can't get them in the States yet. So the prices aren't insane, although you're still looking at 50 to 60 grand.
Easy, yeah. Like that's on the low side of a higher mileage one. We think. I mean, I know they're up in the 100,000 range for a low mileage, like Mint example. Yeah. But we still want to be able to use ours and take it to the racetrack and do some mods. So I'm not looking for something that's completely pristine, but at the same time.
You want to buy a nice one though, because they are going to go up in value.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
It's kind of an investment car.
I want one stock. So, and that's the other thing. We want to build a really cool car for the channel as well. And I think an R34 would be really neat. There's a lot of people that have done R35s, and to me, that car doesn't necessarily need a lot to be really fun, but I don't even know, because there's so few people that have them here that have documented the builds. Like, they're usually the guys that have them here go to car shows and they're already built 1,000 wheel horsepower, right?
Yeah, 1,000 wheel. I mean, if we built it, I think we would do it in a very simple way, but a performance-oriented way, and we would actually take it to the track and have some fun with it. So that may be something you see in the future. Let us know if you like that idea.
Yeah, and if any of you are importers or know of importers that can help source us one, by all means, reach out to us. I would love to hear from you, and maybe we can talk some shop, and maybe we can work out a combo deal, because the other car that I really want to bring in is an S15.
Yeah, I love the S15 too. I'm not really an S-chassis guy, but I got to admit the S15 has always kind of given me a semi. It's a beautiful car. I love the body style, and I mean, it's still an SR, so we'd have to K-swap it.
No. So here's what I love the S15, and what I don't love about it, and just anything in particular, just like the GTR, is that it's right-hand drive, and living in a left-hand drive country, driving that car on the regular poses a bunch of problems. So I have come up with the wacky idea of trying to convert it over to left-hand drive. So the S15 that we're looking for isn't, again, like the GTR, a mint condition, quality show car example. We want something that, hey, if you have a chassis kicking around that we can pick up, that would be great too, because I don't want to take a mint car and destroy it like that. I want to take a car that's
a bit of a beater.
Yeah, that's been used and that we can kind of play with and fits, I think, some S14 parts, which is what, in my mind, I think we do it and then figure out the dash. But I also think that would be a really neat video series to see whether converting a car over is worthwhile or have we really butchered this thing and we got to throw it in the scrap heap.
How much of a headache is it to convert from right-hand to left-hand drive?
Yeah, and will it look good, right? Like, that's the big thing too. When you do this conversion, especially with the dash, like, how do you get things to look cosmetically proper, right?
Yeah. Plus, just having an S15 to rip around, it wouldn't be all bad.
Exactly.
All right. On that note, I guess we will tune out and say thank you for watching. We appreciate all the help on Patreon, and we also appreciate all the purchasing on our Speed Academy shop. It's been helping us keep the shop here up and running, so thank you for that. Next up, PT, we got more K-swap to do. We got more Connie to do.
We do. We got to get back to work.
Let's get to it.